Welcome to While You Are Single TV, the channel for single adults who desire godly relationships. Today, this week, I'll be talking about getting started in godly relationships. Let's get started. Hello, my name is OJ Tokes. I'm the host of While You Are Single. And this week, I'll be discussing getting started in godly relationships. So, how does an individual get started in godly relationships? Well, if you don't mind, let's travel to Mark chapter 10, verse 2. If you don't mind, I want to reference that scripture to get some insights into starting in godly relationships. In Mark chapter 10, verse 2, some Pharisees came to Jesus. They were trying to entrap him. They were trying to test him. They were trying to get him in trouble by asking him this question. Is it lawful or permissible for a man to divorce his wife? Now, just for the records, my emphasis is not on divorce. I am not talking about divorce. However, the biblical references I'll be looking at, they kind of talk about divorce, but that's not my emphasis. My emphasis is more on part of Jesus' response to their question. Okay? So I'm not talking about divorce. I'm talking about getting started in godly relationships, but I'm going somewhere with the references in the following verses. Okay? So in Mark 10, verse 2, the Pharisees came to Jesus and asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? This same story is echoed or mentioned again in Matthew 19, verse 3. In Matthew 19, verse 3, it says the Pharisees came to Jesus and asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Any reason. So Matthew 19, verse 3 gives us more details about the question they asked Jesus in Mark 10, verse 2. Therefore, the question was not, is it okay for a man to divorce his wife? The question was, is it okay for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Which means it wasn't that divorce wasn't something that they were familiar with. It wasn't that divorce wasn't something that was happening. The issue was, when was it okay for a man to divorce his wife? So the question was, could a man divorce his wife for any reason? So Jesus responded in Mark chapter 10, verse 3. What did Moses say in your law? Then in verse 4, he said, divorce was permitted. He said, you write a certificate of divorce and send her away. Now, the Pharisees' response was based on Deuteronomy 24, verse 1. You see, the Pharisees did not just come to Jesus and just pull a rabbit out of a hat and just ask him that question. There was a source for their question. There was a perspective. There was a precedent for their question. And that came from Deuteronomy 24, verse 1. And in this verse, Moses said, if a man marries a woman and she no longer finds favor in his eyes because he finds something wrong with her, some translations say because he finds something indecent in her, and or he then writes a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her away. So the question the Pharisees were asking Jesus was based on Deuteronomy 24, verse 1, where Moses says, hey, if a man doesn't find something wrong with his wife because she was indecent or unclean, then he can write a certificate of divorce, put it in her hand, and send her away. That was the source of their question to Jesus. The issue with Deuteronomy 24, verse 1 was the word indecent or unclean. There was a debate or an argument about what does it mean when it says the husband finds something unclean or indecent with his wife. There were two schools of thought that differed on what it meant when it said indecent or unclean. These schools of thought will be discussed next week.